Good afternoon. Mbona sisikii sauti ama tumechoka? Good afternoon. Standing between lunch is always a tough thing. Sasa nitajaribu kuifanya hii iwe rahisi kidogo. So today I was asked to talk of cyber-threat intelligence. And thanks to my all other presenter, they made my work very easy because they spoke of many challenges that we have. They spoke of the threats that we currently experience, the emerging threats in a cyberspace. They spoke of initiatives and so on. So I think my work won't be that difficult. I want to start with this one. We no longer live in fortress like the old people that we normally see on those old movies, where if you want to break into them, then you need to get there, start working hard to get inside the certain palace, and then that when things start collapsing. Nowadays, we live in what we call digital age. And digital age, we mostly transact on digital platforms, we communicate on these digital platforms and so on. So this brought about a serious challenge on cybersecurity. Nowadays, we have a lot of cyber threats, and no one is safe. And I'm happy that most of these other presenters, they spoke that we don't have 100% security. Not only that we do not have 100% security, but everyone is a target. All you and I are target to these cyber criminals. So basically, I was reading the other time the story of the Star from Kenya. They said each day they experience 1 million threats in Kenya. I think TZ said they also monitor our threats. How often people try to access our data, access our money, try to cause data breaches and so on. So we have that serious problem across many countries in this world. So everyone can be a target, and if you're not a victim today, you might be a victim tomorrow. I always love to give my experience when I fall victims when I was second year in my first degree. And it's a long story, but bottom line is I have fallen victim several times, regardless of where I stand as a cybersecurity person. So as I've said, everyone is a target. If you're not a victim today, you can't be a victim tomorrow. That's why it's very important to understand the story of cybersecurity, threat intelligence, threat hunting, and all other things of note. Now, we have attacker, motivation, and tactics. And thank God, most of these presenters, they spoke of these things as well. That we have attacker from different places, they have different motives, and they have different tactics. So here, I'm sure you are going to get the presentation. You will see we have state-affiliated, we have those hacktivists, and we have many other kind of attacker. And of course, you can see some industry, targeted industry, and so on. Then, I want to speak of impact of cyber attack, where I think most of us, we did not really, most of other speakers, they spoke of it, but they did not really touch it. I think all these kind of impacts were not really well touched, so I want to concentrate on that. Number one, these cyber attacks and cyber threats pose a serious threat to our national security or our organization's security. So we have organizations. You may fall victim to data breaches. You may fall victim to impersonation and so on. And all these pose a serious threat, whether it's an organization, individuals, or national security threats. but also can lead to loss of customer or business. Just imagine, every time you're the only one crying that you have fallen victim to cyber attack. You can't provide service that people need. Definitely people will start jumping from your organization to other organizations, just because you have been experiencing distributed denial of service attack or ransomware attacks or any other sorts of attacks. In addition, we have loss of those data. That's why we have Data Protection Commission. That's why we have Data Protection Act. Because critical data can be lost because of these cyber data breaches that we mostly experience in our organization. In addition, we have danger of goodwill and reputation. And this is a serious issue. That's why sometimes people do not like to report incidents, because they fear of reputation. People will think of what, that we trusted you with our money, and unfortunately now are in wrong hands, or we trusted with our data, and now they are in the wrong hands. So reputational and a goodwill also is one of the serious impact of these cyber attacks. In addition, we have loss in revenue. I like this one a lot, because I think many people do not understand. And that's why the other time I was having a discussion, speaking of how the service may go down. For sometimes, people cannot transact. People cannot make calls, for example. People cannot do this and that. The government does not do business. When you transact, it collects revenue. That's how economy is built upon it. So if people can no longer receive such services, then the revenue will not be collected. That will lead to economic consequences. So this is very, very important. That's why we need to take these cybersecurity issues very serious. Because if our country is held hostage with cyber criminals and we cannot do anything, I think it's happened in several countries, we have seen it, then the economy of our country will be in jeopardy. In addition, we have temporary or permanent closure. I've seen several companies that have shut down their business because of cyber attacks. And I've seen several, they temporarily shut down their business because of cyber attacks. So these things also is one of the serious impact of cyber attacks in our organization. But also people can go to court. We have seen cases, now we have seen people can complain, they can go to court, they can request compensation. That lead also with reputational damage and so on. In addition, we have danger of terrorism. We have seen a lot now. Now some of the cyber terrorists are also causing a serious trouble to our countries, whether stealing money or causing or attacking critical infrastructure, where we cannot receive those sensitive services and so on. In addition, we have story of time wasted. We lose a lot of time fixing these cyber-related issues, while we can invest heavily on being proactive instead of starting fixing the problem once it happened. That's why I always say prevention is always better than cure. And of course, we have heard the story of ransomware attack in several organizations. We saw those organizations were unable to produce new cars for 3 days, for example, the story of Renault. We have seen the story of Toyota, that they were having serious trouble on the same as well. So these kind of scenarios that you can no longer be productive because of cyber attacks is one of the serious challenges that we need to look at closely. In addition, we have another thing that I want to talk of, because many people normally ask me this question. So Kileo, what are the issues? Because cyber attacks are now and then are keeping coming up. We have a lot of challenges. People are troubling. Money, the story of, how do we call it? This people being conned on social media. Pesa tuma huku tuma kule. And there are many other scenarios that we currently have. They don't go away. So what are the issues? I think this is a serious thing that we need to address. And I think this is where now I may concentrate a little bit before I go to the actual threat intelligence. And this is part of threat intelligence, by the way. So I put my presentation into 4 stages: prevention, detection, and then investigation and prosecution. When it comes to prevention of these cyber attacks, the serious challenge that we have is awareness. I think all other speakers spoke on the same thing, that people lack awareness. They do not understand the do's and don'ts. They can't understand that, for example, the story of verification before you do the transaction, when you receive such kind of messages where they ask you, ile pesa ulikuwa tume huku tuma kule, instead of doing verification, the story of Sitapeliki, the campaign that is ongoing. So people have serious challenge with awareness. And this is a big problem to most of our organization. And of course, different countries cry on the same. So I always call upon different organizations and countries to invest heavily on cybersecurity awareness. Number two, we have a serious problem with security policies. You can ask yourself, how many of us have those security policies in place? The do's and don'ts in our organizations. And the security policy, I've been reviewing security policies to different organizations in and outside the country. We normally have three challenges with these security policies. Number one, you may find organizations probably do not have at all these cybersecurity policies. So the individual within those organizations, they do not know what are the do's and don'ts within the organization. How do we create strong password? What are the need for you to do in order to access a certain file, data, or something like that? So these happen to be a serious problem in most of the organization. But number two, people might have policies, cybersecurity policies, but when you go and start reviewing those policies, you find they copy somewhere and paste. And in a weird scenario that I found from my experience, some they copy even from completely opposite organization. And then you paste the organization, you expect to resolve the challenges within your organization, something which is not right. But another thing, you may have a very good security policy that address many things. You did it from the scratch, following all those 10 procedures to come up with best security policy in your organization. But unfortunately, that security policy is not available to those users. They are not aware of that security policy. What are the do's and don'ts? So now that, again, becomes a serious challenge. But another thing that we normally have is about threat management. How do we manage our threats in our organization, in our institution, in our country? What are sort of things that we put in place to manage our threats? Do we know how do we manage these serious threats that are coming to our organization? Measures, tools, and so on. Now, we are going to look at it at length when the time goes on. But another thing, we have a serious problem with skills shortage. We all agree that there's skills shortage. I've seen here, people are saying that we need to recruit chief cybersecurity officer, data protection, analysts, and so on. Very good. But do we have them? You may find an institution with many, many people, 1,000 people, but the IT team has only 2 to 3 people. Initially, I used to hear that they say, you know, Kileo, we don't have a lot of security personnel in our country or in our African countries. Most African countries, they have similar problem. And I used to agree then that probably, yes, that's a problem that we can't really have those skill sets. But nowadays, if you look at Tanzania, for example, we have UDOM, TIA, and many other universities that create these individuals. The very bright students that I've met in now and then, talking to them, I feel that they can be very proactive, they can help our organization to resolve different challenges, but unfortunately, we do not use them. But unfortunately, we do not have them to create those places within our organization so that we can utilize them to resolve challenges in our organizations. Data Protection Commissioner forced people to have data protection officers. And that's why many people start complying, recruiting those data protection officers. Some I've heard, they try to use someone, you know, you are in a legal team, whatever, just now you will be now a new data protection officers. We need to take these things serious if you want really to proceed or to be able to be proactive in our organizations. Now, prevention. Now let us talk of detection. A serious problem with detection is weak detection mechanism. Things like DLPs, intrusion detection systems, and so on. We normally see organizations that don't invest heavily on these tools that they can help them detect things before they happen. And unfortunately, these put a lot of organizations at risk. So we have this problem with detection and mechanism. We have very weak detection mechanism in most of organizations that we need to put a lot of effort to make sure that we move forward. In addition, cross-industry collaboration. I've heard here a lot of songs saying that we need to collaborate, government, private sectors, this and that, education sectors, what, blah, blah. Very good. But do we put these kind of words that we normally talk of in action? Because you find people do not really collaborate. You find institutions dealing with one thing, but they do not share intelligence. They do not share info. As a result, you find a certain attack happen to one organization. In 2-3 days, the next organization is hit with similar attack. They never share info. They never share intelligence. And when you try to ask these individuals, they will tell you, kifo cha wengi ni harusi. So I've been hated, ngoja na mwenzangu naye alie, tulio kwa pamoja, tuo tunalia wengi. And that's a serious problem that we currently have in our organization. We do not collaborate. On the other hand, criminals collaborate heavily. They do not care where you are, what kind of person are you, is it you're from which country, color, and so on. They collaborate effectively using different tools. We have Maltego and others. They normally use them effectively to make sure that they collaborate and achieve their objective when they want it. So the collaboration also becomes a serious problem. When it comes to investigation, I've been to this field for some time, and I was lucky to serve in cybercrime unit under DCI. And we started the cybercrime unit. We were investigating different cases there. One thing that I've seen, we lack these tools to do proper investigation of different scenario to get the right person behind bar or to prosecute the right person. You find probably, and this is not a problem of only African countries. This is a global challenge. When you go to different places, that's why I remember the Santon Agreement, we were having these people behind tools. And you agreed that the tools, some of these tools need to be available freely, just like the criminal. They have their tools available online for free. And we agree that the other tools need to be reduced in terms of prices. So this is a serious problem when it comes to tools. You find that small tools that will do a certain thing become extremely expensive. You cannot afford it as an organization or as a country, and then you end up having troubles. Then, of course, the story of laws. Thank God in Tanzania, 2015, September 1st, we had a Cybercrime Act. Now we have a lot of acts. Now enforcement is another thing. Having those documentation is one thing, then enforcement is another thing. Seeing action happening and seeing having those laws help us reduce troubles in our organization and country at large and continent and world at large is another thing as well. So we have problem with common laws prosecuting cyber crimes, and of course cyber crimes need to be prosecuted with cyber-related laws. Another thing we have is we normally do not know the hotspots. You hear the report says, for example, a certain country or a certain places or a certain region have a lot of cybercrime cases. Then the statistics are there. Maybe they have few faults here and there, but unfortunately we don't use them as a part of threat intelligence to make sure that we mitigate those challenges from happening. Another thing that we normally have, we need, on investigation, we do have methods that we normally agreed upon globally. And when I was trained of this, I realized the digital forensics investigation is not just a simple thing the way people probably think of. It has a lot of things to consider, the principles, a lot of things. So unfortunately, if you don't follow all these globally agreed principles and frameworks and so on, you may not get the right person in place. So the methods, the processes that we normally use sometimes need to be updated and be able to, so that we can be able to do the proper investigation of these high-tech crimes. When it comes to prosecutions, again, we have a challenge. I've heard many people saying that Kileo, we hear a lot of people committing crimes, cyberbullying on social medias and this and that, but we don't see action. So when it comes to prosecution, we have a serious problem with reporting and investigation and then prosecuting individuals at the end. And also the laws that we normally use become challenging because sometimes the law cannot explain something. We need to update our laws. So these happen to be some of the issues that I decided to bring on board. Because of the interest of time, I'll move to the next slide. Now, let us look at the threat intelligence, because that was sort of giving you an idea of the challenges we have, the impact and so on, so that we can look at the threat intelligence. Threat intelligence, as you can see, this is the process of understanding the threats to our organizations. It mostly need us to collect a lot of data. It needs us to do a lot of reading, understanding the current threats, understanding the emerging threats, so that they can prepare to be proactive when it comes to dealing with cyber attacks. So all this is all about threat intelligence. How are you prepared? How are you looking at the current trends, the threats analysis from other, we have had 2 countries here presented their experience. So how do you take those experience of those countries to merge with your own issues within your countries and be able to, those experiences help you to shape your cyberspace. So that's about threat intelligence. Now, threat intelligence, if you want to understand better, then you need to look at the common cyber threats that we normally experience. And good things, my colleagues spoke of them very much. 2024, we had many cyber threats: insider threats, social engineering, software update, supply chain attack, data breach on our mobile devices. Especially now, we migrate a lot of using these mobile devices, whether it's mobile phones, laptops, and so on. Phishing attacks, ransomware attacks, man-in-the-middle cryptojacking attacks. Because of these cryptocurrencies and mining cryptocurrencies, now cryptojacking become one of the serious threats. Also the story of IoT botnet and so on. But 2015, if you look at malware attack and so on, ransomware attack become one of the top cyber threats so far. And that's why I heard yesterday DG ICTC spoke of it heavily, that these are kind of threats that we need to look at very closely because it's going up. And because of now we have RAS, ransomware as a service, we have a lot of individuals. Now I think we have more than 27 a small company offering these things as a service. And you get this service for free until you get your payment. That's when you get money. So every person can commit ransomware attack. And that's why these things become a serious problem and serious threat to our countries, our organization, and we need to look at it in a different perspective. Actually, the other time I was presenting on how do we manage and how do we fight off cyber, this ransomware attack. And at the end, I mentioned some of the initiatives that we have to fight off ransomware attack. Now we have a project, a global project called No More Ransomware. How do we fight ransomware through that project of No More Ransomware? We discourage people from paying ransom. Instead, they should invest heavily on backups. So when you have any challenge with ransomware attack, you can go back to your backup and start and continue your business as nothing ever happened. But do we really follow that kind of things? What about the awareness? How does a ransomware attack reach to our organizations? The story of email, clicking unwanted links on emails. The story of leaving different ports. I remember yesterday the lady Esther spoke of how the ports can be exploited and how ransomware gangs utilize those open ports to cause a serious problem. How do we mitigate those challenges? How do we be? How are we proactive on that particular area? That's a serious problem that we also need to address at length. Importance of cyber threat intelligence in cybersecurity. As you can see, it helps us identify potential threats. Very, very important. Also, it helps us improve the incident response. If you have an incident and you have a very good intelligence of those particular different sort of incidents, then you can be able to respond to incidents effectively. Also, it enhances the sort of threat hunting. I know now some of the banks in Tanzania also are investing heavily on threat hunting. It helps us understand the challenges before they reach our doorsteps. It helps us do many mitigation process before we fall victims and so on and so on. So cyber threat intelligence supports us on that. And also, it keeps us updated on current threats. I always wonder if an organization does not have those cybersecurity people in place, how will they even know about what kind of threats are currently troubling many organizations? And what should they do for them to remain safe? So these kind of things can be heavily supported with cyber threat intelligence. Two main sources of cyber threat intelligence: we have internal and external sources. Internal is your data, the activities within your network. How do people, those vulnerability assessment you do and you realize what is happening. And then you have the external one, whereby you look at the data from outside. The news, blogs, different blogs speak of different threats and so on. The news, you hear the story of, for example, flights in America were grounded because of a certain a cyber attack. You hear the story, for example, Miami, their water was, cyber criminal managed to put more, is it chlorine on water? Yeah, put more chlorine so that the water could not be of use. You hear, for example, the story of a certain country. Their financial institutions were completely crippled and they were not able to transact for several hours or several days. So those kind of external sources or data, they will help you shape your own cyber security within your organization. In addition, I've mentioned already about these types of CTI, of course. Types of CTI, you have human readable and, of course, machine readable. Human, look at your people and how how we can utilize effectively security analysts, how they help us do this and that. And of course, when it comes to machine readable, then we have a lot of tools there that can support us to be able to collect a lot of intelligence so that we can be able to protect our organizations and put our cybersecurity in check. Apart from CTI, now the power. I like this part also. The power of CTI, cyber threat intelligence. Cyber threat intelligence, it has many things here. I will share the slides, but I want to just give you in a summary. These are the three things I want to share. Cyber threat intelligence is very effective in supporting us to anticipate and prevent cyber threats, especially these ATPs, advanced persistent threats. If you invest heavily on threat intelligence or cyber threat intelligence, then you'll be able to anticipate easily and be proactive on these cyber threats before they cause damage. But also it supports us on identifying and detect challenges. That's why you have a lot of tools that support cyber threat intelligence that will shape and help you to detect early. Because remember the other time, the story of Yahoo, they spent 4 years to detect they were falling victim to cyber attacks. So if you can be able to detect early the attack, then you can minimize the problem that comes along with it. And also it reduces the inevitable impact of advanced threats. If you fall victims and you have enough cyber threat, you have invested heavily on cyber threat intelligence, then you can be able to come back to normal as quickly as possible. The role of CTI in prevention, as I've said, these are the three things. One, it supports us, we look at the threat landscape. And I didn't want to talk of it much because most of the presenters, they spoke of it. Different attacks, different threats we experience every now and then. I remember the mod posts, the type Keen, that they were targeting our ATMs. The mod posts where people when you go to the supermarket, you try to do transaction, the money that you paid will be taken by cyber criminal. The money that you have paid also will be taken. And the information of your card, the mode post was a serious threat. But also remember the type KIN, the 7 code that people put on ATM, the ATM starts splitting money without having any, you don't have any card, you don't have anything. And many other kind of threat landscape that will help you understand what is happening and how you can get prepared before. Wanasema mwenzako akinyolewa weza kukotia maji, ndio? If you don't know something is happening the other side, you cannot get prepared. So threat landscape. But also it helps us in vulnerability management. How do we manage the vulnerabilities within our organization? I think this thing is very important. I think many of my colleagues spoke of it. I don't want to speak more of it again, but we have a serious problem with vulnerability assessment. Or how do we manage these vulnerabilities in our organization? Yesterday I posed a question here, and I want to respond to it also myself. I've seen one serious mistake that we normally do when it comes to vulnerability assessment. You know, vulnerability assessment has 4 things that you need to check. Number 1, you need to do the vulnerability assessment to your people. Are your people aware of cybersecurity? The extent of awareness within your people, because people are the weakest link to the security chain. We all agreed upon that. And every security incident has human element. So if your people are not aware, then your people are vulnerable, then definitely you experience cybersecurity threats. Then we need to check on our processes and procedures within our organization. Your security policies, are they compatible with what you have within your organization? Look at the loopholes with your policies, procedures, strategies, and whichever the kind of processes that you have within your organizations. And then the technology part of it, where now the hacking part, the simulations that we have seen clearly yesterday, how people can exploit port and this and that, how you can close those ports, that's another thing. But also, what about the physical security? You may be having good awareness, you may be having good technologies in check, your policy and everything is in check, but unfortunately, physical security has a serious problem. So we do not, most of the time I find organizations do not really look at it in this way. That's why I say this is a common mistake that most vulnerability assessors do. And when you find loopholes, then fix it before it is too late. But also, we have the story of security awareness training. How do we train our people? How often do you train your people within your organizations? I know we have a lot of training institutions that provide security awareness program, capacity building, and so on. How often do we agree to those kind of things? So this is a serious challenge that we need to address, the policy and procedure development. I spoke of it on the challenges there, and the time is running very fast. Let me move on. The role of CTI in detection, as I've said, CTI also supports us in detection, early threat identification because of investing heavily on cyber threat intelligence, but also proactive defense strategies, because you know many things. You have learned a lot of things, threat hunting and threat intelligence combined together. You have your analysts there, they provide a lot of data, external data as well. I have heard, I have seen from the previous slides. Then from there, you'll be able to be proactive when it comes to defense strategy. But also enhance incident response so that you can be able to understand all 7 steps of incident response. From step number 1, what do you need to do, to the step number 7. But also, it supports us with continuous improvement in our organization because of the current threat intelligence that we have invested in. The role of CTI in mitigation. Number 1, it aids us in incident management. I spoke of it earlier. Also, it aids us in damage controls so that you can, for example, even if the attack comes to your organization, then it won't really bring serious trouble to your organization compared to those who have no idea of these threats and all. And also the story of recovery planning. How do you recover quickly from these cyber threats? Because we normally say, we have our say, that we do not really pay attention whether you fall victim to cyber attack or not. But we normally pay attention to what time did you spend to recover or get back to normal. So you might fall victims. Anyone can fall victims. And it's not something you should be surprised of. And no one can prevent that. But then how quickly can you recover when you fall victim? That's when we now start paying attention to. So this cyber threat intelligence will help you achieve that objective of coming back to normal as soon as possible. And of course, risk assessment, as I've mentioned, it's something that also this cyber threat intelligence supports us on it. And I think it's a very, very important to understand that we really need to put a lot of effort on risk assessment. And when it comes to risk assessment, as I've said, it's BPT, your people, process, and technology as well. Critical infrastructure protection with CTI. We have critical infrastructure. They spoke of it. Most of my colleagues, they spoke of critical infrastructure. Transportation sector, health sector, financial institutions, health, water, these things like, DAWASA and so on. All these are critical infrastructure. If we do not put a lot of effort to protect this critical infrastructure, our SGR, our transportation sector, we always digitize a lot of things. So how do we protect this critical infrastructure? This is something that also we need to put a lot of effort on. And CTI support us on these particular things. I've mentioned many things here. I see my colleagues telling me the time is running very fast. Then you can see it provide valuable insight to ensure that compliance with these regulations, the story of third parties and so on. So CTI or critical infrastructure, the threat intelligence is one of the very important things to put in place so that you can be able to protect them very well. Also, how do we build, because I'm winding up, how do we build cyber threat intelligence? If you want to build cyber threat intelligence, we need to consider these things. Number one, you need to invest on technologies and tools. And I'll talk a bit of technologies and tools. But also we need to invest on collaboration and sharing of information. Threat intelligence is all about sharing information, sharing intelligence. Have fallen victims. Some people managed to breach to my data. They stole this and that. They stole my money. How do I share with this next organization so that the cyber criminal may not use the same technique to attack another organization? So that is all about sharing of info. So come up with mechanism. I've heard BOT. They are having the platform within the bank so they can share those intel and info so that they can minimize the risk. So that's very important. We need to adapt that in our institutions, in our government to government and so on, so that we can be able to do better. But also, we need to continue providing trainings on CTI. CTI, I've said this is just an introduction, just a little bit to understand, but CTI is a very big thing. People normally go through it, understanding things at length, the threats, how they happen, how to mitigate, the challenges, other experience, and so on. I've said about ransomware, the sort of insider threat, the sort of social engineering, and all those types of social engineerings. Then, as I've said, I'll talk a bit of technology. We have many technologies that aid us on our threat intelligence. The buzzword today is zero trust. And I remember even the ICT Commission, the other meeting we had a presentation on zero trust. Because now many organizations, many countries are heavily investing on zero trust in order to support their threat intelligence and so on, of course, to mitigate and minimize the cyber-related challenges. But also the IAM, privilege access management, those multi-factor authentication. I've seen my colleagues spoke of it. Currently, we have how many factor of authentication? Do we know that how many factor of authentication currently we have? Esther, how many do we have? How many? Huh? How many factor of authentication currently we have? Multi-factor of authentication, how many? 3. Yes.
We have multi-factor authentication.
2 factors.
No, multi.
Yes, multi. How many so far that we currently have been deployed to many organizations?
I'm not sure. 2 factors is what was usually used. But now there's multi. People can use, and with AI you can use multiple factor authentication. It doesn't have to be 2 or 3 factor. It could be multiple.
Good answer. So far, currently, with all the research and what we have done, we have reached to 5 factor of authentications. And the 6th factor of authentication is also being researched, and I know some organizations have started implementing it, and it's working very well. So we have the story of username and password, what you have, what do you know? And then we have the story, the OTP, the keys and so on, what do you have, the cards. And then we have the biometrics, the fingerprints and all. And then we have how do you do things. And then we have where you are. And then we have the time, the one that now people are starting to implement. All these are factor of authentication that we have to think of. Because I wanted to emphasize this, because most of us think of only those 2 factor of authentications. So we have multi-factor of authentication, as Esther clearly mentioned, and we have reached 5 that have, I know, fully implemented in many organizations. Now, we need to embrace tools as per our need. We have the software as a service, infrastructure as a service, on premises, bring your own devices. So we have different tools, different need. For example, bring your own devices. You can think of visual desktop infrastructure. Sindio? Then we have identity access management. You're talking about to ensure the right people get the right access to the right resources at the right time for the right reason, enabling the right business outcome. This is all about IAM. So that's one of the tools that you can think of to help you mitigate different challenges with your organizations. The last tool I want to talk of is Zero Trust. And as I've said, Zero Trust can be normally leverage the story of multi-factor authentication, IAM, and other tools as well. The story of Zero Trust, as you can see, the center of Zero Trust is data. You need a lot of data to achieve the Zero Trust, yes. You need a lot of data to achieve Zero Trust, and definitely if you have enough data and you want to make sure that the thing of Zero Trust, trust no one but verify everything. So is it the right person that need to access my resources? Do you have the right, those factor of authentication? Did you pass all those factor of authentication or not? So this is about Zero Trust. You're going to get the presentation. You will see how the Zero Trust can support our organization in terms of making sure that our organization remains safe. Core principle of the Zero Trust model, you need to re-examine your defaults. We have our defaults, access control, so think of re-examining them, leverage varieties of tools. As I've said, we have a lot of tools that they can aid on Zero Trust, and also enable real-time monitoring. Very, very important. This is how you can achieve, core principles of Zero Trust model. And of course, align the broader security strategy. We have different security strategy. You need to align with them so that you can achieve the objective. As I wind up, this is the principle, as I've said. And then after that, how to implement the last thing. How do we go and implement Zero Trust? Identify your sensitive data. This is number 1. Make sure you know your sensitive data. Yesterday, we heard about inventorying our data. People in many organizations, sometimes they do not know what kind of data do they possess. Inventory your data, limit access, the least privilege. People should have access to things they need to have access to. But also detect threats, monitor those activities, and also use baseline, compare current solution you have with other best practice. That's also something else. Also apply analytics. So this is how you can implement Zero Trust. As I wind up, that is all about Zero Trust, how you can implement. And I've said this presentation will be available. You are going to have it. And that's it. Thank you. Now we'll be waiting for questions and answers.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Kileo. Yes, that was powerful. A round of applause, please, to Mr. Kileo. I know it's almost lunchtime, but obviously for the presentation we had with the previous presentation and this one, I would like to welcome our own Director General, Dr. Nkundwe Mwasaga, to moderate the topic 4, which is harnessing cyberspace as an engine for economic growth. A round of applause for Dr. Mwasaga, please.